Gold is boring again. We'll talk about why that's good in the face of a strengthening dollar. The 10 years boring again. That's a good sign. Al-Qaeda is busy. We'll talk about Al-Qaeda. We'll talk about Afghanistan, the danger of forever wars, and why neither administration on either side ever cares about you. OnlyFans? About to have no fans. We'll get into that. We'll talk about the hypocrisy that is the American criminal justice system and Purdue Pharma. We'll also talk about yours truly coming down with COVID. So a lot to get to. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with my co-host, the COVID-free Mr. Nick Hodge. This is episode 131 of Bizarro World. Nick, apparently, this is now the second episode where I'm coming to the audience and you with COVID on me.
I don't even know what to say. You could have worse things on you, I guess. I too have the antibodies from, not the infection, but from the jab. And you sound okay. And so I'll let you talk about it. But also, gold wasn't very exciting for long. If it's boring again, that was fast. I'm sure we'll talk about it. Tell me about the COVID.
I guess last week during the episode, I had the COVID. So as we talked last week, I was busy all week, finalizing plans for my wife's 40th birthday party, which was on a Friday evening. It was phenomenal. Happy belated to her. We had a great time. She had a great time, more importantly, right? And so, I ran around all last week, preparing for the party and working out and running in 100-degree heat and doing my boxing workouts in the garage and going to the gym and just thinking that I was suffering the worst allergies of the year. I never had allergies until I came to Austin. It's the one downside to living in Austin and nearby here in Round Rock is the allergies. It's a seasonal thing. It takes the body a while to get used to. So all week I just imagined that it was the worst week for allergies. I was coughing some stuff up and some body aches, but nothing that seemed, extremely out of character or out of line with what I've experienced with allergies in the past. So, that was all last week. Did the episode, had a couple of people mention to me that my voice sounded a bit strained. I talk loud. I talk a lot. So I just chalked it up to that, right? So we have the party on Friday. The party's amazing. She had a blast. Happy with that. Got to celebrate with friends and family. And the very next day, my wife starts feeling symptoms, right? So mind you, this is now 7 days after I'm feeling my initial set of symptoms, which coincidentally, and I don't think I even shared this with you, happened the evening that I was T-boned. So I was in a car accident. I don't think I've shared that with you off air last week. Yeah, it's been an interesting week, right? So without rambling too much, I'm at a light. It's a red light. Light turns green. I go. Young lady guns it, thinks she can make the red light. Hits, the driver's side right on the front quarter panel. So anyway, the car will be okay. Her car was destroyed pretty much. We were all right. Later on that evening, we said, you know what? It's been a heck of a day. Let's have some drinks. Let's go to a nightclub. Just have a good time. We'll Uber it there, Uber it back. Did that, and apparently there were some people there that I found out afterwards had COVID and failed to mention it to anybody. So I, like you, had the jab, was vaccinated, and so was everybody at my wife's party. Small party, small get-together. Friends and family, about 25 of us, give or take a couple. And, day after the party, she starts having symptoms. Sunday, she tells me, no, this feels a little different with the breathing and my lungs. On Monday, I want to do the responsible thing and I want to go get a COVID test. And so sure enough, she goes in 20 minutes later, comes back positive. And then of course, we go through all the precautions and isolating and everything else that comes with that. So luckily, look, it seems like the vaccine did exactly what it was supposed to do. And what it's supposed to do is not prevent it completely, but prevent it for most. And in breakthrough cases like my wife and I, make sure that the symptoms aren't life-threatening or severe. And that's absolutely been the experience, luckily for us so far. And so, she's a week into it now. I'm 10 days into it, symptom-free. And that's my COVID story. So, hey, I'm back. I'm here. I'm glad I didn't miss an episode. Ta-da!
I'm glad that everyone's okay, both from the accident and from the COVID. It's amazing what happens when you have the vaccine, as you know, we're learning all too well. And so, like you were saying on the podcast last week, facts are facts, right? You only have to look at, places like Alabama, who are literally out of, intensive care beds or emergency room beds this week. And so, a lot more to say there too, I guess. I'll ramble for a bit if you don't mind. I think everybody is tired of coronavirus. I think it's been with us for approaching 2 years now. And I think as a populace, we've been told a lot of things, told to believe a lot of things. And, people hijack that for their own goals, right? Politically and media wise. And so, what was I going to say? And even, government agencies like the CDC going back and forth on the mask guidance and being so, I guess this is the point I wanted to make, is being so confident in it, right? Like, remember when we didn't have to wear the masks because the science was clear? Like, that's what the head of the CDC was saying, Rochelle Walensky, back then, right? The science is clear. If you get the jab, you don't have to wear the mask. And now the tweet in the past couple of weeks was, the new science is clear. Right? And so that's literally what the tweet said. And so this is where people are getting, I think, tired and fed up. And you get all these regional and, partisan draws and bends on things here in Washington. I don't know where you're at in Texas. Actually, I do know where you're at. In Washington, we got the mask mandate back. And what's so funny about the mask mandate is, and I'm not anti-mask and I'm not anti-science, but the mask mandate itself, just doesn't make sense, man. It doesn't pass the common sense thing. Correct. It starts on the 23rd. So for the next 3 days, we're all good. That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So, and then also when I walk up to I just went and picked up my lunch and they were asking you to wear your mask when you're in line, but the people who were sitting down, no mask. I can't do the non-common sense thing. My brain will not allow me to do that. So soon I'm going to have an altercation. I sense it coming because my brain says, nah, man, don't comply. Don't I can't. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. And it's not because I want to infect people. And it's not because, I don't believe the new science or whatever it is. It's because if I'm standing 5 feet from someone who's not wearing their mask when they're sitting down, it literally doesn't hold water. And so when things don't hold water for me, what I call it like I see it. And so I have to call it like I see it now. And I think a lot of other people are doing the same. And at the same time, I have to call it like I see it with simple science and the vaccines, which we talked about last week, So if you got to put me into a camp, like we got to do with everybody these days, I'm pro-vaccine and I'm an anti-masker.
And look, speaking from the perspective of someone that either just got over or still has COVID, was vaccinated, spent the whole fucking year in my house, not going out other than, socially distant gatherings in my backyard, did the right thing, waited for the vaccine, got the second shot. I'm in the same camp. It's not a partisan point. It's not a talking point for me. It's common sense and science, like you say, right? And so even after this experience, I had someone say, well, the vaccine doesn't work. And I said, listen, we had a party of 25. There's 2 positives. We have minor symptoms. It actually is proving the point of the vaccine. Now, you can be against the vaccine for other reasons, and that is completely up to you. I respect that, and you can do with your body as you will. The same way that I respect a woman's right to choose, I respect anybody's right to not have to put a vaccine in their body that they're against for whatever the reason may be. But again, just be accountable, and on a somber note, I talked last week about, a couple that are close acquaintances to us, and, their father was in ICU and he was one of the few people that actually, because we have such low ICU capacity now, here in Texas and specifically here in Austin, he was on a ventilator. He was in ICU. And unfortunately on Friday, on my wife's birthday party, they were going to stop by and they couldn't because he passed away. And again, it's it's not to say it wouldn't have happened had he been vaccinated. But fuck, that's a hell of a question to have to ask, right? And so you all out there do what you will. But there is legitimate science to follow, and I completely understand the skepticism of government and government institutions. And if anybody knows me and Mr. Nick Hodge, I think we're as skeptical as anyone out there, and we like to vet shit and ask upside, ask questions and then ask them upside down and then ask them again and ask a different person and then, ask it in a different way. And then you have to come to your own conclusions. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I'm still not wearing a mask. And also I'm vaccinated, and I'm glad I am. And if the booster shot comes in a couple of months, I'll wait a couple of months, because now I'm super protected. I had a vasectomy. I had 2 shots. I got a booster coming. Like, I feel like I'm the king of the world right now. I can pretty much do anything I fucking want, and I'm going to be all right. As long as my wife approves, right? But look, jokes aside, everyone. Let's just have more fact-based conversations. I've been trying to drive that narrative here, since everybody's so narrative-based now the past couple of months and years on this podcast, just saying, look, we're all a whole lot more alike than we are different. Quit looking for reasons to fucking disagree on things. It's okay to disagree. Let's do so in a civil way, and I hope we can do more of that. I made a comment last night. There's a picture of, a heartbreaking picture. We'll get into Afghanistan and the fucking debacle that is. And, the bungling of it in this case right now is Mr. Biden's fault. It's the president's fault. You're in charge. You take the cake. You had intelligence heads up and warnings, and, nobody acted on those apparently. And so he gets the blame for this specific circumstance, the pullout, right? And the people that are stuck there. But, I made a comment because somebody on Twitter posted something with the image of, people fleeing for their life, kids and women and men, crowded on a plane trying to escape. And the one fucking thing that this person, and I'm friendly with this person, no disrespect to them, they know who they are if they're listening. The one thing they got from that picture was, where's the mask mandates when it comes to immigrants? And I'm sitting here going, dude, with all due respect, you come from a background where your people were persecuted religiously. For 20 million of your people got slaughtered, right? And the next comment was, well, how come they're not picking up arms and fighting back? And I'm just like, how tone deaf can you possibly be? How little empathy can you show for people in a situation that's desperate, to say the least? It's desperate, to say the least. And we can talk about, and we'll talk about, the blood that's been spilt on all sides, and the treasury that's been spent, and the pointlessness of it all. But that doesn't mean that we can't have empathy for people going through a situation like that. The same way that, frankly, pisses me off that nobody gives a shit about what's going on in Mexico, really. We're going on 350,000 people dead over the last decade in the country where my parents live, and I have a ton of family, and I can't go back. My dad, it's been a hell of a week. I didn't share this with you either. My dad just had prostate surgery yesterday. Thankfully, it went really well, and he's doing really well. I spent the entire week, Nick, after my car accident and my COVID thing, hoping that my father's surgery wouldn't go bad, that he woke up from the operation, because if he didn't, I was going to have to make a really, really, really tough decision about whether I could go or not, because of how delicate the situation is in the state and the town that I'm from. And so, I had an aunt that passed away a couple of months ago. I couldn't go down. I talked about that on this podcast. And so, again, just for people that are out there, and just, I know Twitter isn't the fucking real world, but I actually have had real conversations with this person before, and I think I think the guy's a good guy. Like, just read the room a little bit, man. And whatever your partisan beliefs are, your beliefs about immigration, or your beliefs, those are just people just trying to live, man, and get their kids to safety. And I don't know how anybody could fault anybody for that. So anyway, that's my rant on that.
Oh, and it's a good one. Of course, the masks don't matter in a humanitarian situation like that. And we can talk more about Afghanistan if you want. But yeah, I think, like I say, people are wearing thin. They're looking for reasons to be upset, and they haven't realized, at least for the large part, that the only thing that they really have to manage is themselves, right? Like that, all that extraneous stuff, unless it's impacting you directly at the time, you don't have to worry about that. And in the same breath, it's the reason, unfortunately, that we as a society, and even me as an individual, keep places like, Mexico, or, pick them over the years, Sudan,
Haiti, Cuba.
Right. Haiti, even now, 2,000 people dead in that earthquake. And so, it's, that's the way the Western world has developed, and I'm not sure whose fault that is, but to go out there looking to be like a Karen about that sort of stuff is, not necessarily how I want to spend my time.
No. I mean, we can be better, everyone. We can be better. We can find ways to help. We can find ways to, I don't, this person happens to live in Florida. I don't sit there and say, hey, it's fucking people in Florida that aren't getting vaccinated that are taxing the healthcare system, and I'm having to pay taxes on a federal level to help subsidize that. Of course I don't say that, because that would be a fucking tone deaf thing to say when people are dying, and I know people in Florida, right?
Exactly.
Anyhow, gold is boring again. Let's get back to it. Aren't you glad COVID has slowed me down so much, Nick, and I'm calmer and more peaceful now?
15 minutes. Here we go.
Gold closed at 1781. We said a week or two ago that gold had better hurry the hell up and get its ass back close to 1800, or we might see a breakdown that was a whole lot more consequential than the little flash crash that we saw. It's reacted beautifully, right? After the whole August 9th, August 10th dip to that 1720-ish level. Here we are on August the 20th, right back at 1781. This in the face of a strengthening dollar, which closed at 93.44. The 10-year still below 130. It's clear to me that capital is sniffing out what you sniffed out. We talked about this a little bit the past 2 weeks as well, so I won't belabor the point, but it's sniffing out the rotation that's happening, and that there is a change, a miss. And I think that the gold price holding up while the dollar is strengthening, while the major U.S. indices continue to make record highs, and the crypto, the better ones anyhow, the Bitcoins and the Ethereums of the world continuing higher. All of that tells me that capital, big money is looking for a happy home that at the very least isn't abusive to it, right?
I mean, turn. That's what the market's doing, and it's got people a bit confused because things are looking for direction, including still gold. I think that pullback to below 1,700. It was very, very fast, but it also was right to the screws where it pulled back to in March. The gold price I'm talking about, and so. I think it's wanting to gain energy to bounce higher off that level, off that high 1,700 level. I think, who am I? But anyway, I think that, if I would want to bounce higher than 1,900, I would want to take one more bounce on that trampoline off that like 1,700 level to really make sure I got over it. That's just a fat guy jumping on a trampoline. I don't know what the gold price is going to do. It's other things don't make up their mind either. So, the big things like you're talking about, where's capital gonna go? I don't think capital knows. And that's, why things are turning or rotating. You got the dollar going above resistance and then coming right back down to it. Is it support or resistance? It can't make up its mind. And similarly with the bond yields, and it's because of the whole thing we talked about, really not only on this podcast but in the newsletters as well, as the persistent inflation and the growth that's now slowing, and we don't know how long the growth is going to slow and how slow it's truly going to be, given the Delta variant and all sorts of stuff. And so that's where we are. It's very tough to be committal. I think, I was thinking before this podcast what we're going to talk about, and I think, not knowing is the smartest thing right now. I've got a bit of cash. I tightened up some buy unders on gold names, but For me, I think it's still a little bit defensive, and you can see that as real estate's now like the best performing sector for the entire year to date now in August of the S&P, and that happened very quickly. I mean, and the other thing that happened very quickly is, that dollar strength has, bonked. They say bonked here in Washington. I would say bump, like I bumped my head in Maryland, but in Washington they bonk their head. So anyway, it's weird, right? Dialectal thing. But that rising dollar bonked copper and oil prices pretty smartly as well. And, I don't think that's it. I think that, copper went down to $4, which is sort of a nice place to bounce off of, right? And, if you put a gun to my head, I say that, copper is still in a bull market and is going to continue to be strong, and that $4 is not going to break down. But those are the questions that I think everyone is sort of asking themselves right now if they're not on vacation.
Agreed. And let's be clear, there are lots of people on vacation. We talked about that last week. But there's also some smart capital that's coming in. And I don't want to get into that yet because I'm writing about it for the next issue of Junior Resource Monthly, which will be out by month end. But there's a lot of quote unquote smart and at the very least, deep pocketed capital that's coming into the gold space, coming into the crypto space, and coming into the uranium space. And I think we're going to see that manifest itself in outsized moves here in the next quarter. So should be an interesting end to Q3, should be a fun start to Q4, and a fun end to the year. And with that being said, I can't wait to get out to Beaver Creek between September 8th and the 11th and go vet new companies and talk to existing companies that we're invested in and sponsor companies of Resource Stock Digest. And then I can't wait to get to New Orleans with you and Brian London and everybody else that'll be out there in October to present and frankly to listen to some of the brightest minds in across multiple disciplines. Danielle DiMartino Booth, Peter Bookbar, Mr. Nick Hodge, Rick Rule, Ron Paul will be there. Can't wait to get his take on this Afghanistan thing because he's been spot on about that for a very, very, very long time, as most true libertarians have been, right? So yeah, looking forward to that. We talked dollar strength, we talked gold. The major U.S. indices continue to do what they're going to continue to do. I'll leave that there unless you have something to add on the markets there, Nick.
No, you touched on crypto is looking stronger. You asked me about it a couple of weeks ago, and I said that I wasn't really doing anything. I was holding, and I think that holding is to the upside here for same reasons that you just mentioned. And I guess the only other thing I'd add is that two quick things. Tax law seems to be starting earlier and earlier. I've already started looking personally at my portfolio in that respect, so I know other people are as well. And the other thing that happens in the fall is exploration activity and news flow picks up, so you got that to look forward to as well.
Absolutely. A lot to look forward to. I'll add just one last thing. We still have a lot of assays pending from a lot of quality projects with the labs backed up. And I know that's, it's been kind of a bit of a headwind for a lot of share prices, that coupled with the summer doldrums, coupled with a host of other things. But I think Q4 is going to be fireworks, man. It should be interesting.
Can't wait.
Let's get into Afghanistan. One former intelligence official and U.S. Marine who served in Afghanistan told CNBC that while the end result and bloodletting once we left was never in doubt, the speed of the collapse is unreal. Went on to say this is an intelligence failure of the highest order. This is now a different gentleman, Bill Raggio, a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, whatever that is. He told CNBC that it's the biggest intelligence failure since 1968. Another lieutenant said, "We did not understand the tribal dynamics. We never did. We think everybody wants what we have. It's cultural obtuseness, obliviousness to their reality."
That's not new, man. You mean the cultural differences in the Middle East are new? Get the fuck out of here.
Thank you. And that was going to be my next point. Let's be absolutely fucking clear. we've been at this for 2 decades. A lot of us called bullshit back in 2001, 2002, 2003, right? More than 6,000 American lives have been lost. Anybody that listens to this podcast or knows me knows I have the utmost respect for our military and our firefighters, those two especially. Over 100,000 Afghans have been killed. I'll say that's on the low. That's low end conservative numbers. And more than $2 trillion has been spent by the US. And so for the headline on CNBC's website, under the key points to read, that the speed of the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan has shocked the world, is framing it in a way that I think is disingenuous. And for former intelligence officials to say that it was a result of not understanding the cultural reality, again, that's complete bullshit, right? It's complete bullshit. I almost wonder, Nick, like I do with Mexico, like I do with a lot of other things, and this is me with my tinfoil hat on, my COVID tinfoil hat on, if this isn't the way it's designed to be.
Sure.
Right? Instability for the sake of instability, because the more you keep unstable, it's kind of like R. Kelly. Right? And I'm going to compare the U.S. foreign policy to R. Kelly. Yes, I am. I'm going to piss a lot of people off. It's okay. Get mad. R. Kelly is accused of running a sex cult where he would pimp people and bring minors in, boys and girls, underage people, dress them like kids, do the nastiest fucking things with them. But it was all hidden behind a wall of people that enabled that. And as long as they were paid and taken care of, they didn't ask the questions or do the things that any good human would do. Meaning step in and say, this is bullshit. This can't happen. I'm not going to be a part of this. Oh, and you're going to prison forever, at the very least. And so this was only made possible by him isolating, different people in different houses in different states. And that's what sex traffickers do. They divide and they conquer. And as long as everybody's too busy suffering their own fight, nobody ever bothers to look around to see what else is going on and to see if there's a pattern. And I'm sorry, but there is no way that our finest intelligence officials for the last 20 years just had no clue that this was the end game. It took 10 days, Nick, from the time the Taliban said, okay, we're reloaded, to get the president to flee and everybody to get the fuck out, and the U.S. didn't see it coming. I just can't believe that. And if that is the case, then guess what? Y'all should get ready for another 9/11. Because if that's the case, if we were caught this off guard, not pretend off guard, really we were caught this off guard with Afghanistan, we got some bigger issues and some bigger problems. Because I hate to tell it to y'all, the Taliban ain't the fanciest, ain't the most connected, ain't the most sophisticated, don't have the best weaponry, don't have the best intelligence. If this is the result, and it's genuine that we were really caught off guard and we just couldn't see this coming, we are in trouble.
I think they could see it coming, and I'm talking way out of my expertise. I think they could see it coming. I think that they didn't want to admit failure. I'm not sure that instability is necessarily the goal as much as perpetual war is for whatever reason. I'm not sure the government is that smart to play a 20-year-long instability game and plot that from day one. I think they're more inept and everybody likes their paycheck every 2 weeks, right? I think it's more a military industrial complex thing than it is us getting, caught that off guard thing. I thoroughly think our, tracking capabilities and just think, all this stuff is digital and cyber. We were talking earlier about how we had to find some business record. And, I found it in Google chat from, a year and a half ago. And so that's how they're tracking terrorist movements and how they can prevent, big 9/11 incidents, which is always why the ground war was stupid, right? It's right. Because, you're not stopping terrorism with that. It's not even where fucking Osama bin Laden was, right?
Thank you. Saudi Arabia, by the way, 95% of the people on those planes were from Saudi Arabia. What do? We let him go kill one of our journalists.
It's more it's more a military industrial complex thing, keeping the paychecks coming for the entire Pentagon and the millions of people that supports through Booz Allen Hamilton and Northrop Grumman and Honeywell and Raytheon. I mean, I don't think that's any secret. And then, I think that finally the public will was such that, and this is actually Biden doing a little bit of great champion fourth turning stuff,
Yep.
We got to go. There's never a good time to go. And that's always the cover for perpetual war, right? Look at the sad little girl with the dirty teddy bear. And it's like, yeah, but, the Constitution says otherwise, and we can take refugees and all that sort of stuff. The way we left obviously created a vacuum and created problems, but that's not greater than the reason that we shouldn't have been there, if that makes sense.
A Pandora's box is called a Pandora's box for a reason, and there's no way that this Pandora's box should have been allowed to be open for 20 plus years. $2 trillion later, 6,000 American lives, 100,000 Afghans on the low end of it. Yeah, a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings. The one thing I will give Mr. Biden credit for is that saying, look, never a good time to leave. It's happening now, and we'll do everything we can to get Americans out. But be absolutely clear, he takes the cake on not seeing this developing with the speed that it developed and not preparing. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was saying the world sees in real time. I mean, they're scraping bodies off the wheel wells of planes.
Exactly. So yeah, you hell of a segue. But you said who could have seen this coming? You know who's not coming anymore? People on the fans on OnlyFans. Oh man, what is wrong with OnlyFans? They're about to have no fans, Nick. They have decided. Let me give some context, right, for everybody out there. So we had this thing called COVID, little thing I'm carrying with me right now, and during the pandemic, people, male and female, young and old, were forced, to find supplemental income streams. And so, not everybody was content with whatever the government gave people, $300, $600, $1,200. I don't know how much people got. So some people took it upon themselves to become entrepreneurs and get on this new platform at the time called OnlyFans and say, look, I don't need to go through a third party to get my content, whatever my content is. That could be teddy bears, that could be unicorns, that could be sexually explicit content. I can set up my own page. I have this platform. I'll give them a little bit of a cut. And I can market myself. And a lot of people did very, very well. I talked about this about a year ago about a young lady that was a friend of ours that was, she went from like hairstylist, making good, respectable money, $4,000 or $5,000 a month to making $20,000-$25,000 a month and getting all her trips comped, right? So, and
I told you about the mom with the kids in private school, and so there's been all sorts of OnlyFans stories where the school said, "Hey, you got to cut this out with the thing. Your kids are in private school." I knew there's been all sorts of stories like that. We talked about that on the podcast.
We did all sorts of success stories. So now OnlyFans has decided that it is banning the one thing that most users go to its site for, which is pornography. And the reason they say they're doing it is that payment processors like MasterCard and Visa are putting pressure on OnlyFans to no longer have that type of content. And here we go again with the privacy conversation that we had about Apple and the slippery slope. MasterCard and Visa did this last year with Pornhub. Right. And, again, the reasoning back then, and it may have been valid. And if this is the case and they clean their act up, which it seems like Pornhub has, no pun intended. The accusations at the time is that the porn site was showing videos containing underage sex and revenge porn and, non-consensual sex rape, all sorts of nasty things. And so if that was the case, good on MasterCard and Visa for putting pressure on a Pornhub. Now, with that being said, it's not like once they cleaned it up, MasterCard and Visa came back. Not the case. But now it's doing the same thing with OnlyFans. And so OnlyFans is now saying that we're not allowing any explicit content on here anymore. And so I have to wonder a couple of things. The first thing I wonder and I'm sure somebody is, but is somebody out there just, blueprinting OnlyFans right now and calling it a different name? And if that's the case, they're going to gobble up, again, pun intended on that one, market share really, really quick from OnlyFans. Because I guarantee you that all of those people that are doing really, really well, and then there's a lot. The company generated net revenues of $375 million last year, and it expects to hit revenues of $1.2 billion this year. That capital, like capital in the resource space, like capital in the crypto space, it's going to go elsewhere. And I'm curious to see who develops a similar platform. That's curiosity number one. Number two,
you'll want to head on over to manyvids.com.
Let me write that down. Manyvids.com. And the second thing I wonder is, will a platform like manyvids.com or whoever invents the next great thing make it a crypto payment system only? And this is how, in my weird brain and the way it functions, this is how I see fiat currencies and traditional credit card processing companies, payment processing companies like Visa and MasterCard working their way out of market share, right? And this is where, again, I believe that cryptos have a very legitimate future. Bitcoin has a very legitimate future in the way that we transact, because, again, this is something that was good for OnlyFans as long as they needed the content to grow their revenues and generate a certain market cap. And once they got it, just leaving it and banning it and saying holier than thou, not on our platform, forgetting who made them, right?
That was who I saw was upset as, I guess, let's go with content creators. They were the ones who were saying, look, you guys made your money. Exactly what you just said, allowed us to have this platform. And then, felt sort of double crossed that, it was then taken away. And so a lot of stuff to talk about. I saw the ManyVids thing and a tweets that were saying exactly what you were saying. They were looking at this like licking their chops because obviously the traffic was going to flow their way. You make a very interesting point about the credit cards because, I mean, money's the lifeblood of everything, right? If you can't collect payments, you go bye-bye. And so there's a lot of different ways you can talk about that. Visa and MasterCard are private companies, just like Twitter
like us.
And Facebook are private companies. I'm going to get there in a second, just like we're a private company. And, we've seen and we talked about this, how Twitter is able to remove people from their platform and is within their rights to do so because they're a private entity. And if you don't like it, you can, start your own Twitter, which I guess, maybe some people are trying to do. And then, I'll meander for a bit, I guess. Hopefully I can come back. One of the questions there is when the platform becomes so big that it's ubiquitous or that everyone uses it to communicate, do they then have an obligation to a free speech, or are they then too big for their britches? And you've got some of the too big for their britches stuff going on with Facebook in Washington right now. I haven't kept too close an eye on that, but I tend to get caught up on that because the tech breakup, I think, is a big theme that's been brewing for a while. And then you'd look at the payments to these other platforms, and can they be circumvented? And this is an interesting question. If MasterCard and Visa are big enough that they can wield that power, how are those companies not trusts or monopolistic in that respect? And so whatever approach you take, I think, one of the answers, and that's sort of where you wound up, is the crypto workaround for payments, because it's no secret that a payment processor can, choose to do business with you or not, and assigns you a level of risk. That's sort of how you pay your fees, right? What tier of risk are you in to process payments for? And some businesses are more risky than others. And when you operate a business, one of your priorities should be, redundancy of payment processing, right? If one goes bye-bye or chooses not to process my payments or gets hacked or for whatever reason goes down, can I switch to an alternate form of payment processing so I'm literally still in business and can whatever put shoes on my feet or food in my mouth, or more importantly, my family's mouth. And so in this industry specifically, we've seen some of that. I mean, I'll talk. Agora has had this problem with Visa as far as what the promises they make in their advertising and sales copy and the refund periods that they allow, and their aggressive sales tactics, and also the level of chargebacks, right? People calling their credit card company to protest or contest a charge instead of dealing with the company from which the charge generated. All that plays into it. And so, I guess that's about it. I've taken the long way home, but we've mentioned DeFi, decentralized finance, on this podcast before, and that's exactly what that is, a workaround so you don't have to use centralized institutions like Visa and MasterCard. Instead, you use decentralized finance with tokens or cryptos that have their own apps or software built on top of them. And I guess specifically, that's why people turn to Ethereum. And I guess that's about all I got on that. Like Forrest Gump.
I will say this. The future, obviously, is going to look a lot more different than I think even the most visionary amongst us believe. And stuff like this is going to expedite that change. Classic fourth turning stuff. And just the hypocrisy of it all, right? The hypocrisy of it all. When I go to P10, my favorite strip club in Austin, because they have Tito's again, FYI. They have Tito's back, so I quit going for a while because of the pandemic thing, and I haven't been there in a little bit, but the last time I was there, they got my Tito's back, so I made the mistake of not having cash in hand, Mr. Hodge. And so what do you do when you're in an establishment where, people depend on you tipping to make their living and for you to be entertained? Right?
You go to the ATM in the corner.
You go to the ATM in the corner, that long walk of shame, right? And then when you go to the ATM in the corner, you got to make it count because you don't want to have to go back again. And you know why you don't want to have to go back again?
Because it's a $10 fee.
No, it's $16 now, Nick. Inflation has got us. It's $16 now if you're withdrawing anything above $100. 16% to get my $100 out so I could give it away to the same people that just charged me the 16%, except of course it's not the same people because the establishment doesn't get it. The processing companies get it. And so again, credit cards, good for weapons. And I'm very pro Second Amendment, good for guns, good for AR-15s, good for ammunition, good for Tito's, good for titties. Apparently not good for nudity online that's consensual and verified. Interesting times. I don't know what else to say other than the hypocrisy of it all. And hypocrisy brings me to my next thing with Purdue Pharmaceuticals. And I know you opined on Twitter earlier because I saw it, but you want to tell the world here and people that aren't familiar with Purdue Pharmaceuticals, these assholes are now looking to negotiate with their lobbyists?
I mean, the saga has been so ongoing, and there's so many layers, and it's affected so many people that it's impossible to recap here. But the Sackler family is the family that's behind Purdue Pharma, which is the family that was, behind the widespread predatory opiate distribution that occurred, which led to the opioid crisis in the country, through which a lot of people ended up losing their lives. So now they're saying that they want immunity. They're going to withdraw the money that they offered to pay for programs for people affected by what they did. And they're saying, unless you give us broad legal immunity, we're not going to help these people. And I was just thinking that
if somebody doesn't go arrest those motherfuckers, I mean, we are dealing with the modern day fucking genocide almost of a vulnerable group of people. And you said it really well on Twitter, Nick. And I know this hits home because you lost somebody very close to you, your brother-in-law. I've lost people Everybody in America has either lost somebody to death, to addiction, to whatever the case may be. Nobody has a family in the United States that hasn't been affected by these assholes. And for them to admit in court, that their marketing was predatory, that they looked the other way, that they encouraged their pharmaceutical reps to go prey on people the way pimps do, the way kingpins do, the way people go and decimate entire neighborhoods. They did this to an entire country. And for these assholes to get lobbyists and say, hey, you know what? We've already given you $573 million, to go ahead and settle opioid claims. And I'm sorry, that was McKinsey. That's different group. But part of the settlement was that they were going to give hundreds of millions of dollars to certain victims that had filed class action lawsuits, which again isn't bringing anybody's people back. It's not bringing anybody back. The pain is there. It's forever. It's not going away. The least these fuckers can do is have some decency. The fact that they haven't been arrested, the fact that they even get to do this in a public forum without consequences is beyond me. It's beyond me. There was a guy this week that went to the fucking Capitol building and said he was going to blow the place up if he didn't get to talk to Mr. Biden because he thought Donald Trump should be the president. Something about what he hears on TV or understands about the most recent election or understands about President Trump motivated him enough to go park in front of the Capitol building and say that he had a bomb and he was going to blow some shit up. The fact that the Sackler family that was directly involved in all of this and is complicit hasn't been charged with the crime, and the fact that more hasn't been done to bring consequence to those actions is beyond me. And it goes back to my point about the things we argue about, the things we are willing to engage our energy into, and then the things that we're just like, I'm at a loss for words for once in I don't know how long.
Yeah, I think I'm back. I'm sorry. I appreciate that. I think that the people that it affected, at least at the onset and to a large extent, weren't people that have voices, and it's easy to view it as a drug problem and an addiction problem. And to a certain extent, I have those views as well. And I certainly think that, everyone is responsible for themselves. It's sort of, one of my core tenets. But when you're being coerced unknowingly at the institutional level, then you're not really making decisions of your own volition and free will. And if someone is knowingly coercing you to make decisions that aren't in your best interest and that lead to consequences, certainly that include addiction and death, and it's as widespread as it was, then certainly you've got to be held accountable, because that's not, the failing of millions and millions of individuals. That was the failing of this family and that institution that, I just said it, coerced their free will, and that's a crime. And so, lots of people were affected, and I know lots of people don't have a voice. And I just think to be that callous about it, to say, we're not gonna help if you don't give us immunity, it's just too indicative of all the problems in the justice system, really.
And it's still going on. So a couple of points. Look, the first one is I encourage everybody to go see a documentary on HBO called The Crime of the Century, because I believe this was the crime of the century. And it's really, really well done. Go to HBO, look it up, rent it, stream it, whatever you do. It's absolutely worth your time. If you're not as familiar with some of the details, it does a great job of personalizing it while keeping the macro perspective in place. That's the first thing. The second thing is this shit's still going on. Like when I got my vasectomy, I chose to not be sedated. I said, I don't do medicine well. I don't even like Tylenol and Advil. As long as you're going to numb that area there, clip away. I'm kind of curious. I'll check it out. We'll have a good 20-minute conversation. I am good. I don't want to be sedated. I don't want to be walking around, groggy and not clear-headed, not being able to drive home. Went in, 20 minutes, had a great conversation with the doctor, did what he did, walked out, jumped in the car, drove away, came home, 4 days later, back at the club, right? But in my little to-go bag, my care bag, was a 30-day prescription of the equivalent of oxycodone, right? It was, I forget the name of it, but it's the exact same thing. It's like the generic name for it. And I'm like, well, why the fuck do I got this? So I called the doctor. I said, Doc, I didn't even choose for you to sedate me with an IV. Like, I don't need this. Like, and he said, well, if I don't give it to people, they usually get upset. So I just throw in a 30-day prescription for it. So I got a little bottle with 30 of these things. And I'm like, well, what if I didn't? What if I just thought that this was just something to help with whatever little minor ache I had, and it turned into something else, right? Because that's happened to a lot of people. Yes, there are a lot of situations where clearly people are looking to abuse the drug. There's also been situations where people have a toothache. They think they're just popping something that's, going to relieve the toothache. And a month later, they fucking need some more. And so 30 days later, my local CVS calls me and says, Gerardo, it's time. It wasn't even a person, Nick. It was an automated message. This is how fucking crazy the system is. They call me and they say, Gerardo Del Real, it's time to renew your 3-month prescription of whatever the name of the thing is, the name of the prescription. To renew and pick up, press 1. I didn't even have to talk to a person. And so, of course, I'm like, no, hang up. I get the same call 3 weeks later. And I'm sitting here going, okay, like, I don't even know what these things run or what people sell them for, what people do with them. But I'm like, off of a 20-minute procedure that I didn't even choose to be sedated for, I could have had a 4-month prescription. That's a third of a year, and been popping these things like Skittles high out of my mind because it's just pill heroin, right? Let's be absolutely clear. And in many cases, a lot worse than heroin. And again, this isn't something that has stopped. They're dressing it up in different ways. They're calling it different things. They're writing articles and making documentaries. These assholes need to go to prison, or it's not going to make a difference. As long as you can buy yourself out of the legal trouble you get into with a fraction of the profits that you make by addicting a whole generation of people. There has to be some accountability. I don't know what else to say or how loud to yell or how much to curse or who the hell to call, but something's got to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And, we set aside the opiates for a second. I think just the prescription drug use in America in general has been a problem for a long time. I've written about in years past the number of people who were on antidepressants and things, for example, as sort of anecdotal evidence that, things weren't right in the country, either, something wrong with the populace, that many people are depressed, something wrong with the system that's depressing them, or something wrong with the pharmaceutical industry that's, allowing that many, and doctor industry that's allowing that many scripts to get written. I also think that, and call me crazy, but I don't think you should be allowed to advertise drugs on television. There's a million drug commercials now. Like, if you got this symptom or that symptom, call your doctor and get this thing. It's like, well, you're just inviting people to, and that's obviously what an advertisement is. You're inviting people to like come get your drug. I think that, you should make an appointment with your doctor if you're experiencing something, and then it should be diagnosed and you can talk about courses of treatment. I don't think you should go to the doctor with a certain prescription in mind, right? And so, call me crazy. And then I also think that I don't think it's a fact, the number of people, and I'm going to read for 1 second so I get the stat right, that are on more than one drug, and not even more than one, Gerardo, 5 or more drugs. Here's the statistic. In 1994, 13.8% of older adults were on 5 or more drugs. And now, 2 decades later, that was over 42%. Yeah. So, I mean, the number of people on 5 drugs going from 13.8 to 42% in 20 years. People taking 5 drugs or more. And so, we're obviously a prescription culture, but I think that has room to be reined in, obviously starting with the Sackler family, which we just started, but also in the advertising and things.
I don't know what it's going to take. But yeah, there has to be some accountability there.
There's even drugs. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's even drugs for interactions now. Like you take this, like if you're on these two drugs, like you take this drug for like the interactions that it creates. It's crazy.
It's insane. And again, you don't even have to ask. In my case, I didn't want it. I was super clear. I don't want anything. I don't want to be sedated. I don't want your prescription. I certainly don't want a refill of something I never took. I still have it. I don't know where to turn it in, right? I got to call my pharmacist and ask him where to turn this stuff in because I don't want to give it to anybody because I'm afraid somebody's going to get addicted to this stuff and then I'm going to be responsible. It's going to be, in my energy space and I don't want that on me. So clearly a rigged system. There's women and men and all sorts of people that have gone to prison for decades on end for non-violent drug offenses. For marijuana, for stuff that has never killed a person. They've done decades, had their family tree decimated. And these assholes have the nerve to go out in public, hire some lobbyists and threaten to withhold victim compensation if they're not granted immunity. Do you know how fucking confident you have to be in the crookedness of the system, Nick, to talk that shit?
I mean, it's so apparent that it fosters that confidence, right?
Ridiculous. It's been a great conversation. This has been great. Here's a fun fact to leave y'all with, in case you think it's just the justice system that's rigged, or you name it, drug policy, war on drugs, war on the poor people, war on peace, all of that. The Fed just released their balance sheet this week, Nick. It's up $96 billion in 7 days. So that's about $15.87 million a second. And you think that I believe that they're going to talk tapering? Oh, yeah, by the way, they also just canceled the Jackson Hole meeting. It's going to be virtual now. It's not canceled. It's going to be virtual because of the Delta variant and concerns there. So if any of y'all are under any illusion that we're going to get a taper anytime soon, I have news for you. Just watch what they do, not what they say. I don't even think they'll say it anymore.
Well, you're getting a bit of taper tantrum here. You also had the repo market go to a record over, oh gosh, what was the number? I think it was all ones, 1.11 trillion. And so, that speaks to what we were talking about in the earlier market section of this podcast, right? People being angsty, not knowing which way this rotation is going to go, looking for a place to park that cash. And the banks are clearly content to park some cash with the Fed and the overnight repo facility, right?
Yep. There you go. Mr. Hodge, anything else you want to get off your chest?
I have to tell you about the outdoor deaths. I know we're getting
the weird outdoor deaths. Yes, how can I forget about the... Yes,
I got to do it. And then next week we'll do the tax. But there's deaths. I mean, random deaths. And so in multiple states, just animals and people going outside here in Spokane a couple of weeks ago. It didn't make national news, but because it wasn't a person, these dogs, this family had a bunch of dogs. They lived along the Spokane River, and the dogs every day would go swimming in the river. Fine. And then a couple of weeks ago, they went swimming in the river, and all the dogs came back and died. And they don't know why. They still don't know why. They were doing toxic algae samples, and I haven't heard the results on that. I should probably Google it, but it just seemed super weird. I remember scratching my head going, that's pretty fucking weird. And then this week, there was this family in California who went out for a hike and also died with their dog and young daughter just seemingly on their hike. No foul play, nothing like that. And the government saying, they don't know if it's some sort of poison or fungal, or they're doing tests. And so it just, I don't know, it seemed weird enough to mention because I've heard about multiple instances. And so, I don't know, my ears were perking up.
Well, and again, my weird brain and the way it works, I go back to a year and a half ago when the cows ended up being gutted with no evidence of anything, right? Wasn't that in Spokane?
Oh, no, I don't think that was in Spokane, but I have to look that up. No, I don't think that was here.
You remember there were a bunch of animals everywhere? I don't know if it was in Spokane. I thought it was somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. I could be way off on that, but I know that
Maybe.
there were animals, and I'm pretty sure that they were cows, and we talked about it here a year and a half ago, and they were just ending up completely gutted and sucked of all blood and just carcasses, and nobody could figure out what the hell was going on.
I do remember talking about it, but I don't remember where it was. No. Yeah, super weird, right? I mean, especially a family just dropping dead out on a hike. Anyway.
It's a bizarro world, Nick.
Yeah, I know.
That's all I got this week, Nick. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, everyone. I could be here forever because I'm not going anywhere like I was telling Nick before this episode because I got COVID and so does my wife. But it's been a great week. I hope everyone has an amazing week. Be kind to each other. Find ways to agree. Find ways to disagree civilly. Be thoughtful. Be kind. I'm Gerardo Del Real along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. This was episode 131, I believe, of Bizarro World. Send us off, Nick.
See ya.